Hi, this is Wayne Dean of 3D Pro Services with another weekly sales club. Today's session, we're going to talk about how to sell to homeowners. So, if you're an insurance salesman, a realtor, a construction person, anybody has to go into somebody's home and make a sale in their home. Today's session is a really good session for you. So we're going to review the home buyer's buying process, what buyers do, and hope to enhance both the process for purchasing for both you and the buyer. So that's the intent of today's session. And hopefully you'll send to me an email or call me if there's something more that you'd like out of this session. Again, this is Wayne Dean for 3D sales training. So you can come to me at 970-286-5665 or just email me at wayne@3dpro.services. That's wayne@3dpro.services. And I'll be glad to help you if you don't get enough out of this session to help you dealing with selling to homeowners. So, opening statement here is this: don't believe everything I say. I understand that some of the things I say don't work in the world. All worlds aren't alike, but also at the same time, don't discount anything I say because sometimes it might take a little while for some of my tips to resonate with you. So, I want you to understand that people view sales as a game. I mean, think about it. If you were going to go in today to go buy a new car, wouldn't you kind of like get yourself psyched up to get ready for this negotiation game you're going to have to play with the salesperson? Well, think about it this way: the prospect thinks it's a football game because the salesperson's coming to crush the tackle. They think that that's a salesperson really coming there to beat them up. Matter of fact, the thing is funny that George Carlin, the comedian, did a fantastic bit about the difference between baseball and football. What's the object of football? The object of football is systematically marching down the field, crushing, maiming your opponent, all with the objective of crushing and penetrating their end zone. And what's the object in baseball? Just to go home. Well, that's all the salesperson really wants to do. We look at it in baseball, we want to go home. But in baseball, remember, you cannot go home, which is the object game, without going to first, second, and third base in that area. So I'm going to use the baseball analogy as we discover and talk about why salespeople have to deal with some of these prospects in an adversarial relationship. The buyer system is this: first base of their system is they mislead or they play their cards close to the vest. I mean, after all, they think that misrepresentations to a salesperson don't count in their mind as a bad thing because salespeople lie to them all the time. So it's a natural defense mechanism for a prospect, somebody in their home, to mislead about their true intentions. And it could sound different ways. It could sound like, well, we always go get three bids. Well, the translation to that is thinking about, well, if I say to this salesperson that I got to get three bids, they'll surely give me the best price and they won't pressure to buy me now because I'm going to tell them we'll get three bids. It's a gambit that that buyer in their home is trying. The truth is they really don't have time to go get three bids, but they mislead about their true intentions. Or it sounds like we're just looking. Again, that translation you need to think about is we really need this by the end of the month, but I don't want to be pressured into buying. And buyers feel that if they give you up too much of truth, too much information, they lose leverage. Now, as a salesperson, please forgive the buyer. They know not what they do. And I really hate that I've heard salespeople say, you know how to know when a buyer is lying, their lips are moving, or they've even prospects have said that about a salesperson. And it's really not the case. But again, buyers are just trying to create leverage. I mean, in their mind, they're sitting in their home, they're trying to get the best they can, and they don't know what that is. So they mislead about their true intentions. I make all the decisions on home repairs might be to something. Well, the real truth is my spouse will have to weigh in on this, but I don't want the salesperson to finagle away to get us to meet together. In sales, if you've been in sales for a while, you've heard this expression: you want a six-legger. A six-legger meat presentation, six legs on the table, yours, hers, and his. But when you tell the prospect, hey, is your wife going to be there or your husband going to be there? they always think, well, you want both of us here so you can close us. So they mislead about, well, my wife's, in the other room, but she's not feeling well, or my wife had to go pick up the kids at soccer. Or my husband's not here, he's late from work. Those are all gambits that the prospects do just to protect themselves. And don't get mad at them. You can still go to heaven and lie to a salesman. So don't get mad at them for doing that. We base all of our decisions socially on price. You know, we buy a lot of things on convenience, quality, or service because we don't have time to invite three vendors in. But again, they think they'd lose leverage in the price negotiations if I told you that I don't have time to look at three different vendors. I want to get this done right away. So they mislead about what's really going on and what their true intentions are. So think about it this way. What's the greatest fear buyers have once they invite a salesperson into their home? Think about that fear that that prospect has that you are dealing with up front. And what you really should do is ask them, hey, what's the greatest fear that you have? And it's really the fear of the unknown. What I mean by that is if you're a builder and you're coming into somebody's home to quote them or get information about a kitchen remodel, what that person fears is they don't really know whether that load-bearing wall truly is a load-bearing wall that you're going to have to spend another $3,000 to tuck a beam up in the rafter to be able to extend to make that kitchen bigger. They don't really know permitting is going to cost $2,000 to $3,000. They don't know these things, so they're really standoffish because one, they don't want to look like an uneducated consumer. So what you have to do is the technique is, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Prospect, as you invite people into your home, I'm just curious, what's the greatest fear you have as you start this process? And let them get it out on the table. It's part of step one in the Sandler system. If you follow Sandler, it's a part of step one in some of the other systems. You can't pick up a book, Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, without understanding that bonding and rapport is the first step in building that trusted advisor status with people. And you do that through disarming honesty. So what you really need to do is say, hey, do you mind if we have a conversation about both of our fears? Is that okay? So we could talk about the fear. I have a fear that I'm going to do a lot of work quoting you, getting information, and then you're actually going to go with your brother-in-law and you're just bringing me in. I don't know if that's the case, but whatever fear you have, let's have that conversation now and get it out on the table so that we can start to deal with it right now and not have to deal with it later. So remember, first base is the prospect mislead about their true intentions. So let them share with you what their fear is, technique number one. Now, if you're in baseball and you think about they're on first base and you want to get to second, without somebody behind you getting the hit or walk or an error, how do you get to second? And the answer is you steal. So what happens is the prospect, they've misled about their true intentions, and now what they do is they steal your information. They want to know what you know, and they want to become an educated consumer for free. So they say things like, hey, we probably won't want to do anything right away, but if we did, what would you recommend? And they try and turn you into a free consultant. So the next technique that I'm giving you is say, hey, typically before we meet with a couple, I find that you guys probably had a conversation about what you wanted out of this meeting. Hey, you mind just bringing me up to speed on what you guys were talking about before I walked in the door? What you can find out is the weak one will say, well, he was going to play good cop, I was going to play get bad cop, and we really want to get this. And what you should do is manage the expectations about what the prospect really wants out of this meeting. Do they just want to get your price so they can shop you? Do they really get on some advice as to whether they should do this or not do this? Just have that conversation. Make it a conversation, not an interrogation. So now that they've done that, third base, any thoughts about that in your mind? Well, first base is misled about their true intentions. Second base, they've tried to turn you into a free consultant. And now what happens at third base is we get the dreaded TIO. They commit to nothing. The TIO stands for I'd like to think it over. we'd like to think it over. And the salesperson gets mad. Well, here's the rule. You can't get mad at somebody for doing something you didn't tell them they couldn't do. When did you tell them they couldn't think it over? So what I want you to do is think about they're going to do that. That's their system. So they mislead about what they're going to do with this information they just stole from you at second base. So it should sound like this. Boy, you've given me a lot to think about. It sounds like from them. Thanks for putting this together. I'll think it over and I'll get back to you. Again, as I just said earlier, you can't get mad at a prospect for doing something you didn't tell them you couldn't. So address the TIO issue. Set the expectations of, hey, when we get done, yes would be fantastic, Mr. Prospect. That'd be great. But a no's okay. Thank God for all those girls in high school. They got me used to rejection. But if it's not a yes and it's not a no, what else could it be? And here's where you have to have some patience and you wait. You say, if I get done today, probably isn't going to be a yes, move forward. But it could be a no. And at any time you decide it's a no, I'm okay with you telling me that. But if it's not a yes or no, the worst case scenarios, we'll schedule another meeting. Would that be fair? Please don't feel you have to do the TIO to think it over to me. And I'll tell you how I do that. There's a little technique that I do. I say to the husband, hey, Bob, can I ask you a question? I go, yeah. Did you ask Mary to marry you? Oh, yeah. Did you do the romantic thing, get down on one knee? Yeah, I did. And if you had done that and hey, Mary, will you marry me? If she go, Bob, I'd like to think it over. In your mind, wouldn't that have been a no? And they usually laugh and say, so when we get done, please don't feel that you have to do the think it over. If it's a no, I'm okay. And it might not be a yes. I'm not pressuring you to be a yes, but if it's not a yes and not a no, would the worst case scenario be we schedule another meeting? And those of you that are selling people in their home that are going to get 3 bids, one of the things you have to establish right up front is that you get scope review, meaning that you get to come back to compare those other bids that they did. If they go get 2 other bids, let's make sure we're comparing apples to apples. You have to get this commitment early in the process. You cannot wait until after you've done your pitch or you've given them a quote or you've sent them a proposal and then say, hey, give me, second right of refusal. I get to compare. I always say to somebody, you're going to get 3 bids. That makes sense. I can appreciate that. But when you get those 3 bids, I assume, since I'm the first one on the door, you're going to show them what I offered. Oh, yeah. Do I get to see theirs? Wouldn't that be fair? I think, oh, okay. Because we usually buy from the last store we shopped at. If I'm buying a new shirt and I go to Walgreens or Walmart and I see one that I like there, but I wait and then I run over to Target and I see one there, but it's not as good. So I run back to Walmart. Didn't I buy from the last store? Even though Walmart was the first store, it was the last store that I shopped at. You need to set yourself up early that you can be the last store that they shop at. So this slide is the summary of it. Remember, they're rounding third, they're heading for home, and now what happens is they don't answer the phone, they don't return phone calls, they don't reply to emails, so they run home and they hide is what's happening. You got to do a lot of upfront agreement with these people that that's not going to happen. So remember, the next step is this. People are motivated to action by the intensity of their pain. So if you don't like the word pain, just substitute reasons for doing business. But really, we will do more to avoid pain than we will to gain pleasure. So you need to really stay in the pain step. When somebody tells you, well, I'm looking to remodel my home or the kitchen because it's out of date, don't say, oh, look, I see that a lot. That happens. Let me tell you what I do. Well, why is that? What's the problem? I mean, you can still prepare food, you can still cook, and dig into what's causing this problem that they can't. Well, my brother-in-law just remodeled his house, and my wife wants to go over there every Sunday for dinner. I'd rather stay here on Sunday so I can watch my football game. Whatever it is, what's causing the problem, and what impact is that having on you or whoever the real decision maker? You get to ask the question. Can I ask you a question? Is doing nothing an option? Let's pretend it's a year from now. And you don't do anything. Is that a good option? Typical salespeople look like this. It's called the first step in the salesperson is the dog and pony show. benefits and features. You know, we've been in business since 1945. We've got designers on staff. Whatever it is, you list your bullet points, okay? And the Dog and Pony Show, that actually just coincidentally, that came from Minnesota, 3M, Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing. In the 70s, there really wasn't a lot of sales training. There wasn't a Zig Ziglar, Anthony Portello, Dave Sandler, Tony Robbins. You know, it was mostly people just did the Dog and Pony Show, the benefits and features, throw as much against the wall and hope that the client finds something they like. So that's what most salespeople do. They lead with benefits and features. Then they try and handle stalls and objections. And most people think that's what sales training is, how to handle stalls and objections. Wouldn't it be great if there weren't any? Wouldn't it be great if there weren't any? And then try and close. Everybody's talking about don't take no for an answer. Yes, 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 push, 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 and then chase. So think about what's happening here. The prospect at first base is misleading about their true intentions, and the salesperson's not really hearing what's going on and starts pitching benefits and features. They're trying to steal all your free consulting, and you try and handle stalls and objections. Third base, they're trying to commit to nothing. You're trying to close them. They're running home and hiding, and you're chasing. No wonder you didn't want your kids to grow up to be in sales. But like, it doesn't have to be that way. So what I want you to do, start doing my step system. And I want you to think about the analogy of what the STE. Size up the situation, take them to the pain, extend the pain in the future, propose a solution. So again, the first thing I want you to do is size up the situation, diagnose this prospect. Meeting them on the field for the first time is like, be different. Instead of being like every other salesperson, I want you to walk in thinking about, who is this person? How do they process information? Are they visual, auditory, or kinesthetic? You know, what we say, words are only 7%. Tone is, this is reversed. Tone is 38%, and body language is 55%. Get the way that we talked about, and you'll hear how people talk. Well, we need to fulfill my terms of the contract, what it is that you want out of this. I'll assume you'll fulfill your terms, and that is give me a check, give me an order. Now, one of the techniques, I didn't put technique number 3, but 2A, how would you like this meeting to end? This would be a great meeting if what? You know, I know I appreciate you inviting me in at 6 o'clock. You probably want to get to dinner at 7. So let's say we've spent an hour together. When I leave here, what do you need to say to your spouse? Hey, I'm glad Wayne came in today because this, and this happened. And other than just price, what do we need to talk about? You need to prompt them a little bit, because that's what they're going to say. And if you think about it, sales is the only major profession where we give it away for free. You start giving away your free consulting, your free information. Now, I'm not saying you have to guarantee that you get a check, but never ever give all your free information, your consulting, without getting a commitment as to what that prospect is going to do with the information. So that we're done. I've given you some information about what you think you can do as far as remodeling, your insurance, whatever it is that you're selling in their home. What are you going to do with that information? And that's why you still get that agreement as either a yes or no, or a clearly defined next step. If they agree to that up front, then you're willing to go ahead and give them some consulting. If they will not agree to either a yes, no, or a clearly defined next step, then you really shouldn't go any further. What's really happening is they're just using you. And I will use things like when I don't get a feel for the person really ready to buy, I can tell them that. If you feel it, say it. Hey, I'm getting the feeling that you probably have a vendor in mind that you'd like to work with, and you're just hoping that their price is really competitive. I'm just getting the feeling I'm not that vendor. Why am I feeling that way? Never make them justify their feelings. Always have them ask them justify. Why am I feeling that there's probably somebody else you'd rather work with, and you're just hoping that I can give you a price so that it will validate that the price they're giving you is reasonable. What's happening here? You can have that conversation instead of just giving away your consulting for free. So stop spilling all your beans before the campfire goes out. What I mean by that, get a commitment up front as to what they're really going to do with all this consulting you're going to give them today. And I want you to use a technique I call TACO, TAQ, the old one. Thanks for inviting me in. Appreciate. How much time do you have? What would be on your agenda? This will be a great meeting if we do what? I'm going to ask you a lot of questions, a lot more than probably any competitor, because I didn't walk in here with a preconceived notion, one size fits all. So I'm going to try and sell you. So I hope it's okay that I ask you a lot of questions. But again, as we talked about, the outcome today probably won't be a yes. Could definitely be a no. But the worst case scenario, if it's not a yes and it's not a no, would it be okay that we schedule another meeting? I want you to use that taco as kind of your lead to get a commitment up front before you go any further. If the people will not commit to this, you're going to be giving away a lot of free consulting without a commitment as to what they're going to do with that information. So when you talk about the problem or pain the client has, you think about it, we're motivated by action, by the intensity of our desire to solve pain or gain pleasure. But avoiding pain in the present or future is always the strongest motivator. And a lot of people have said to me, salespeople, well, no, these people buy my product because it's going to give them pleasure if they remodel their kitchen or they have a new rec room downstairs. So put in their pot, pool table. It's going to be pleasure. Yeah, but what's the pain they're trying to avoid? Of buying from another vendor who doesn't know how to do the permitting process, doesn't schedule them on time, can't do all these. There's still always pain that they're trying to avoid. Make sure you have a conversation about that as far as, hey, my job is to try and exceed your expectations because if I fail to meet them, you hold me beneath contempt. But what can I do to help you is what I'm trying to figure out. The prospect won't tell you what their budget is, perhaps. Well, why not? Well, it must be a trust issue, and I mean that by really talking about that disarming honesty up front. When they won't give you information, say, hey, it sounds like I probably haven't built trust with you. So if you don't trust me to give you a fair and reasonable price, why would you ever trust me to provide a valuable service? So can we have a conversation about that? Because that's true. If you say, hey, what is your, it doesn't matter what you charge for your product or service. It matters what the client is expecting to pay. Now, don't say something like, "Hey, what's your budget? What do you hope to spend?" Well, the answer to that is as little as possible. Hopefully, nothing. I was hoping is free. Talk about the pains that the person has. This is the problem. This is the problem. Hey, what do you think it's going to take to fix these problems? And if they say, well, I have absolutely no idea. Well, I understand you don't know what I might charge, but you know what you wouldn't spend. So what's the number that would just be so outrageous you wouldn't even consider it? You'd throw me out. So it's kind of like the old knock knock jokes when we were kids, and somebody say, "You want to do a knock knock joke?" And, oh yeah, okay, you start. And I'm like, well, oh, okay, knock knock. The same thing here is you try and get them to start with what it is their problems are and what they think it's going to take to fix it. As far as the decision making process is, hey, how's the process? Never ask us, are you the decision maker? That can offend a lot of people. Husband and wife, usually the wife makes the decisions. Or if you say something stupid like, well, the wife decides whether you want to have it, and then the husband decides whether you have the money. That can come across as really offensive. The other thing I want you to think about is in our world today, maybe it's not a husband and wife situation, maybe just a partner. So instead of getting into that kind of role, just sit there and say, hey, in your family, in your group, I'm just curious, what's the process you go through for making a decision? And they go, well, what do you mean? Well, I mean, let's say it's a tie. You want to go with me, he doesn't want to go with me. Um, how do you break the tie? I'm just curious. How do you go about that? Because the more information you have, the more power. Information is power, as the philosopher King Machiavelli, and you've read that probably in the past, that knowledge is power. How much knowledge about the process this person's going to go through is important to you. And you're really going to need your behaviors, attitude, and techniques to think about it in this session. So understand that a person's potential decision making is like a tell in poker. So if you can tell in advance their behavior style, what's natural to them, you can predict the outcome. And interestingly enough, Wesleyan University did a study on tracking eye movements for decision making, and it's relatively a new methodology for you to study how people come to conclusions like buying a car, choosing an insurance plan, selecting a college course. What happens is people that have and make a quick decision focus on something right away. They may, if you hand them your brochures and they focus on that one brochure, that person can make a quick decision. If they go through your book and they really don't have any time to really scan it, but they're just flipping through the pages and their eyes scan back and forth quite a bit, indecisive people divide their time over a greater number of attributes. The decisive people, as I said, they focus on fewer things, but interestingly, the indecisive individuals spend more time overlooking at nothing that they have, looking at papers, brochures, trying to make a decision. So just think about it that way. That the person making a decision will focus on one thing and will look at one page of your brochures or concentrate on one of your features, where the indecisive person will go back and forth. And understanding that up front, which one is which, will help you instead of you thinking, well, I got to give this guy to think it over, time to think it over, he's got to sleep on it. No, a decisive person, if they'll tell you that, but maybe they looked at and focused on one thing. So remember, visual people, we talk about visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. Visual people say things like, show me what you have, need to see what this is all about. And you should use the same verbiage that they, okay, wait till you see it. Can't wait to show you. Because if they say something like, I need to see your presentations, show me some of the samples of work you've done. And you respond, well, oh, wait till I tell you about one that I did. It's called a cross transaction, a cross communication, because you're not using the same words that they do. Visual people talk fast. I'm a visual person. I'm used to get a lot of information as soon as possible. Visual people talk as fast as they can because they have a movie in their mind that their mouth is usually 3 frames behind. So but visual people need to talk about, they need to see your brochures. Auditory people need to hear about how the decision's going to impact them. They'll say things like, I need to talk about this. Tell me more. That sounds great. And you should respond to them with the same type of verbs that they use. Like, wait till we talk about this. Is going to be exciting when you hear about this. Now, my wife is auditory. I know I'm in trouble when I say, hey, honey, we need to talk. I'm visual. The house that I have I designed it. I took my vellum prints, and it looks exactly the way today that I designed it. I can picture it. Now, my wife doesn't think in pictures. She wants to communicate. So if I said to her and communicate her, hey, honey, come here, let me show you what I'm going to do. And I'd show her the blueprints and say, hey, I think what we should do is move the utility room from the basement upstairs to the second level by the bedrooms, because they don't want you going up and down the stairs carrying laundry. I thought it'd be better if we took made the bedrooms a little bit smaller and put the laundry room up there. And if I'm showing her that on the blueprint, she doesn't get it. But if I suppose, hey, honey, can we talk about what I'm thinking? Suppose I said, I thought we should move the washer and dryer from downstairs, because if I'm down in the rec room, I don't want to hear the laundry, the washer and dryer. If I moved it upstairs, I mean, we're not going to be running the dryer or washer during the night when we're trying to sleep. Suppose we moved it up there. What would you think? What would you say if we did that? Her response was, that sounds great, because I communicated to her in the way that she processes information. And I think people need to understand that if you're a visual person like me and you're a fast talker, you've really got to slow down with that auditory person. You really have to slow down with kinesthetic. Kinesthetic's the third group. Kinesthetic people, they say things like, I need to get my arms around this, need to get in touch with who you are, needing to get a feel for this. It was a gut decision. Well, quite frankly, those are the type of people who they're the slowest talkers, because it's important you hear how they feel about something. They are the most loyal, though. Once you connect with somebody on a kinesthetic level, don't worry about negotiating with that person. That person says, well, you're going to have to sharpen your pencil. I'm going to go look at the third party. They don't want to take that time to build a relationship with somebody else. But you need to use the same verbiage and the same words with them. Visual people are fast talkers, auditory people the next, and then the kinesthetic. Kinesthetic people are always tapping. They've got to be in touch with something. They've got a pen in their hands. They're clicking it. They've got their coffee in their hand, whatever it is. But that's how they communicate and process information is by thought. Now, the way I want you to think about this is this. When kinesthetic people say, it was a gut decision, I need to get a feel for you, it comes from here. The decision isn't made in their gut. the decision is actually made in the brain, obviously. And if you look at the brain from the top down, you have the center part of our brain, the reptilian part of our brain that developed first for flight or survival. Then the next part of our brain was the limbic part of our brain, and then the outer part of our brain is the neocortex, which stands for new bark. We developed after reptilian part, we developed our emotions. Then the last part of it, we developed logic and how to language. So what happens is the decision is made in the limbic part of the brain. It's made emotionally, but that's validated and verbalized based on the neocortex, the outer part of our brain. So when somebody says, it was a gut decision, it still is an emotional decision. People buy emotionally. They validate decisions logically later. So it's an emotional decision. And I really like working with kinesthetic people, quite frankly, because as I said, they're the most loyal. They speak from the heart. They are people that you can communicate with if you slow down. So then you propose a solution. When we talk about my step up, size up the situation, take them to the pain, extend the pain in the future, suppose we do nothing. And then third base is you're heading home. While you can propose a solution. Now, make sure at this point your product or solution is only addressing their pains. Do not try and upsell or make up reasons why they should buy. I had a guy that came into my home. I'd asked him just to come in and do some cabinetry work. And as he comes into my home to go look at the cabinets in the kitchen, he grabs the banister on the stairway next to the entry and he shakes it and he goes, "Oh." Banister became like the focal point to grab the. That's not what you're here for. You're here to fix the cabinetry. And as he goes into the cabinetry, he drops his pen and he looks underneath my refrigerator and says, "Oh, you know what? We're really going to have to fix that. There's so much hair over there. I'm sure you're losing, your refrigeration isn't working." I go, "Wait a second. You're just here for the cabinets." Then he's next to my wife was just running the dishwasher. I goes, "You know what? Your dishwasher's temperature is set too high." At this point, I don't even want them looking at the cabinetry anymore. I just want them out of my house. So remember, only pitch to the pains that the client gave you. Make the sale today, educate them tomorrow on anything else, but don't go off thinking that you're going to add all these other features and benefits and it's going to sell. You confuse the client. Okay. So my sales coach was a guy by the name of Terry Slattery out of Minnesota, and he's the one that came up with the term Wimp Junction when he was actually a Sandler trainer. Junction is this: which ball field are you going to pick? Are you going to play about with traditional sales, benefits and features, push, 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 dog and pony show, handle styles and objections, try and close hard? Or are you thinking about what you've gained from today's session of asking some questions? And maybe you're going to have to go back to recording if you didn't take notes, but make sure you look at some of the techniques I gave you, some of the steps of dealing with people in home, understanding fear, asking them to get out, talk about expectations, what they're looking to do, how they want this really meeting to end. Have a conversation with people. Now, if you're locally and you're not near me and you want to talk, I highly endorse Sandler training for you if you want to go through Sandler training in a setting with a Sandler trainer. You can still participate in my weekly sessions, but I highly recommend, if you're not in the Colorado area where I am, is to look for somebody that can help you in your business, or just work with me on a weekly basis and we can see what we can do to help you go any further. So now last thing, action. Nothing works unless you do. So you must have the guts, vitality, and discipline to put my step up system to work. You've got to do something. Take one of the techniques that you learned today, whatever the favorite thing you heard me say today, and go do it. Because studies indicate that if you don't take an aspect of training and implement what you learned within the next week, 87% of what you did gain here today will be lost within a week. So go take one of these techniques and try them, even if it's just the one about, "Hey, Mr. Prospect, would you share with me today what your greatest fear is?" So we get, when you bring people into your home for these estimates that you're hoping to get, what's your greatest fear? So I hope that helps you. If you've got any other questions, I told you what my phone number is. Give me a call, see if you want some one-on-one coaching, if there's something that I can do for you. But appreciate you. I thank you and good luck in selling.